Voter turnout has been an increasing topic of discussion over the past few years. In 2016, only 61.4% of Americans eligible to vote participated in the presidential election. That means there were about 100 million eligible people who didn't exercise their right to vote. This was at the forefront of many articles and talking points, following the somewhat surprising election results. Many people were left wondering what would have happened if voter turnout was higher, and what changes could be made to increase voter participation. Americans seem to be forgetting that there once was, and continue to be, segments of our population that do not have the right to vote. We can often take for granted many of the rights that are gifted to us as American citizens: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unless, of course, you are incarcerated or under parole or probation. In that case, many of your liberties are limited or outright denied. And while a violent offender being kept away from the general public seems like a justified denial of civil liberties, why should his right to vote and participate in a democracy be taken away as well? In a society that is continuing to view voting as a give or take option instead of a civic duty, why not give back the voice to a mute segment of our population and allow those convicted of felonies or on parole or probation the right to vote nationwide, and not leave it up to the states to decide their own voter qualification laws? This may seem like a radical idea to some, but allow me to paint you a picture. Imagine, as a college educating student, you're on your way to class. While you're on your way, you get a text message, so you decide to answer it. While you're looking at the phone, thinking about what creative meme that you want to send or funny emoji, you don't notice that you're drifting towards a curb. Your car goes over the curb and runs into someone's backyard. After everything is settled, it's determined that you're going to have to pay a fine, as well as have your license revoked for a year. On top of that, you later get a call from the College of the Canyons dean saying that you can no longer attend classes while your license is revoked. And on top of that, after the year is up and you get your license reinstated, you have to go on a probation period for another year where you can attend classes, not only at College of the Canyons, but nationwide. In that scenario, you may believe that getting your license revoked is justified because the punishment directly ties back to your reckless driving. But should your ability to educate yourself be taken away as well? I believe that many of us would raise objections and argue that one does not equate to the other. I know these examples aren't mirror images of each other, but the same principle applies to both. Now let's get to the problem that lies at the heart of why the voting rights of felons are limited or denied in 42 of our 50 states. And that problem is racism and its roots within our political and criminal justice system. Yes, it's true that the first felony disenfranchisement law was introduced in 1792, way before African Americans who were enslaved at the time had the right to vote. So one can argue that the law was intended for everyone and not just specific groups of people. But what cannot be argued is the fact that state enactment of these laws directly coincides with civil rights advancements. Up until 1850, little less than 40% of states had laws that disenfranchised felons. This number grew exponentially with the introduction of the 14th Amendment. For those who may not be familiar with that, it states that every person born in the U.S. or naturalized is considered a citizen and has their rights to life, liberty, and property protected. But there was also a clause that allows states to withhold those rights from citizens for criminal activity or rebellion. This is precisely where the laws were able to go from targeting just criminals to targeting specific groups of people and taking away their voting rights. We can look at topics such as marijuana use, where in the U.S., African Americans are 264% more likely to be arrested for the possession of cannabis. Even in states where marijuana has been legalized, white people are less likely to go to jail for the use of it, even though they use it at about the same rights as African Americans. This is just one of hundreds of examples where the liberties of African Americans are infringed upon, effectively silencing a portion of an already minor segment of the U.S. population. Felony disenfranchisement continued to rise gradually until the introduction of the 15th Amendment, which states that the right of U.S. citizens to vote cannot be denied because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. After its ratification, over 70% of states passed laws disenfranchising ex-felons, and the number of states that disenfranchise current felons exploded to 90%. This cannot be chalked up as a mere coincidence. Not only do these laws directly coincide with the civil rights being granted to African Americans, but they also disproportionately affect African American citizens as well. According to research done by ScienceProject.org, 1 in 13 African Americans have lost the right to vote, as compared to 1 in 56 non-black voters who are eligible. This number is staggering and cannot go unaddressed. Thankfully, there is a simple yet effective solution. Give everyone over the age of 18 the right to vote, regardless if they are a current or an ex-felon. This would effectively knock out one of the pillars that this racist infrastructure relies upon, actually giving every segment of Americans a voice for the first time in our nation's history. Now, some would argue that someone who commits a felony crime does not have the mental capacity to participate in the voting process. And to that, I would wholeheartedly disagree. We don't stop people with mental disabilities from voting, so this trend should not start with felons. The enactment of this plan would be relatively cost-free, as we could just expand our current voting system and put voting polls in our jails that allows felons who cannot be part of our everyday society to vote. Making this small but integral change to our current political system would be a giant step in eliminating racism embedded within our current political system, increasing voter turnout, and giving a mute segment of our population their voice again. Thank you.